Good afternoon and welcome to Tree Talk episode 145. Myself, Jack Neville, and Matt O'Callaghan of the Weekly Observer and Vale Star. And another hectic weekend of Limerick action. I know I say it every week, but just in the times we're in, everything is coming down on us at once. We have a Munster final to look forward to. I look back on the footballers' exit from Munster. The Camogie, senior Camogie side, kick off their All-Ireland campaign this weekend. You also have ladies football that were out last weekend and have another game this weekend. We had the minors, Camogie side, losing the Munster final last night. We have some club action to look forward to and a few more bits to get through, so do stay tuned.
The impression again we get out with what you put into. It's like a walk of life. If you're good enough, go out and get it, no more about it.
But not so much control in the centre of the field from Kilkenny as Richie Bennett sends it high and over the bar.
Your mother sends you down to the shop for a pound's worth of goods and she gives you 50 pence. You can't get the pound's worth of goods, can you?
Just about kept in. Oh, well done, Shawnee Buckley. To do that to Tomas O'Shea, he deserves to score from here. One of the highlights of the Sunday game.
Limerick went out there from the word go today. No more about it. They made all the running, that was it. Put the ball over the bar and the back of it, and that's it. No ifs, no buts.
Is there much time left? We have a couple of injuries. Here comes Kieran Carey. Carey leading the charge of the right brigade. 45 metres out. He's a chance to score. He's put it hard. He's put it over.
There's no sympathy in this game for anybody.
Again, every week, like we say, you'll see that Kieran inspirational point from Kieran Carey. Today we'll touch on the Munster final, but there's a full preview coming on Thursday with myself, Matt, and Kieran looking ahead to this Sunday's Munster final between Tipperary and Limerick. I suppose for anyone watching now or tune in anytime, make sure to leave your comments. Tell us what you think is going to happen this weekend, and we'll touch on them. But we'll do a bit about the Munster final, Matt, just for those that can't listen to the preview with Kieran. We heard from John Kiley last night. There seems to be real confidence in Kiley after it was probably a below-par performance against Cork. But winning by 8 points and not playing your best will give any team great confidence.
It will, Jack. And if there was one thing about John Kiley last night, he was brutally frank, and he put no tooth in it that they didn't play up to the par or up to the level of expectation that he expected. And he did point out that the focus for the last since the Munster semi-final has been in addressing the shortcomings, I suppose, that manifested themselves in that semi-final win over Cork. But if you take raw statistics, Jack, they're impressive. You touched on it there. You win by 8 points. You hit 20 wides. You're visibly playing below par. You're not reaching the level that you reached last year. It's a good place to be. But the challenge and the trick, of course, is to get back to where you want to be and where you were. And that was what was facing John Kiley for the last 2 weeks. But it's certainly going to be a very, very interesting final. And it's a final that's, the pride and passion for hurling in Tipperary is extraordinary. And they will be smarting from their 2 most recent meetings with Limerick in the Munster final in 2019 and in the Munster semi-final in Cork last year, where they were on the receiving end of drubbings by their standards. So they will not be short of motivation for Sunday. So it promises to be a very, very interesting game. And as you rightly said, we discussed it with Kieran Carey there early on, got a very interesting insight from one of our greatest hurlers, if not our greatest hurler, as to what he thinks about the Munster final and where this Limerick team are presently at. Certainly they weren't at full capacity, but I have been of the opinion for some time, Jack, and during the league, because of the different nature and to a certain degree complex nature of the scheduling of games this year, whereby you had the leagues running straight into the championship, which was an unusual situation. I felt that possibly, and nobody has told me that this is the case, but looking from the outside and surmising that Limerick have said to themselves, right, 4 games All Ireland, the map is drawn. You beat Cork and beat whoever comes in the Munster final. You have an All Ireland semi-final and a final. If you compete for those 4 games, Bob's your uncle type of thing. And there's measurable improvement in Limerick's performance against Cork over that type of performance that they showed during the league campaign. Because I suppose Limerick's league campaign, there's just one word that comes to mind too, which I believe describes it, and that was an indifferent campaign. But I thought it was, whilst Limerick were well short of what we know they're capable of and what they showed last year, in that semi-final win over Cork, there certainly was a clear movement in the right direction towards getting back to their peak.
Yeah, and we won't touch on it too much because there's a full podcast on that coming tomorrow. But another thing that John Kiley mentioned, and it's unfortunate that Mike Casey isn't in contention for that. We had heard probably 3 or 4 weeks ago that Mike would just miss the semi-final but would be there for a final if there was one. But he's hurt himself again. Now, it isn't the knee, thankfully, but 4 or 5 weeks after getting back with his club is awful disappointing, isn't it?
Jack, it's appalling news, and one can but feel gutted for Mikey Casey. John Kiley was at went to extraordinary lengths to explain the difficult road that he had to get to where he was, and the manner in which he approached it, and then to come back and to incur that injury on your first day back, and lo and behold, John pointed out again the way that he has accepted the news and is gung ho again to get himself back fit. An extraordinary player, an extraordinary individual. I'm so sad, and I'm sure all I'm doing is ventilating the feelings of everybody across this county, about Mikey Casey, a fantastic hurler who has been dogged with very, very poor luck for the last 12 months. And let's hope he gets back sooner than later. And that, as you said, let's hope that he'll have a good run with Napirshick in the championship this year, because if any fella deserves to be back on the field playing the game he loves, it's Mikey Casey.
Yeah, I echo those sentiments about seeing him for Napirshick, and hopefully in the green jersey. But all here anyway, that wish the best of luck to Mike Casey and his latest setback. And look, he's a determined young man. We will see him back, but it's just a shame that we won't see him on Munster final day. We might leave it there for the Munster final, Matt, because we've 40 minutes coming tomorrow on that game, and there's plenty of other to look forward to and look back on. And I suppose we'll start by looking back on last Saturday in the Gaelic grounds. Limerick lost 116-11 against Cork in the Gaelic grounds. I suppose, what was your initial thoughts after the game? 8 points in the difference probably wasn't very fair, but Cork were deserving of the win.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And I think Billy Lee, in that interview he gave after the match, which was an excellent interview, by the way, I thought he summed it up when he said, you must remember, he said, Cork are at the top of Division 2, we are at the top of Division 3. And there is the difference. And I think that graphically summed it up. All right, there were not 8 points between it on the day. And, Billy went to, he outlined and he contrasted the reaction of Limerick. 2 years ago in Cork, they conceded an early goal. And as he said, the floodgates opened, which they did. We conceded an early goal this time, but the floodgates did anything but open. Over the course of the game, Jack, I thought Cork were able to get their scores that little bit easier. And they certainly, they threatened every time they came forward. Limerick didn't seem to carry the same threat and the same bite. Now, Danny Neville had a wonderful chance, a wonderful shot at goal. He did everything right, but it was just off target. Had that gone in, we could have been we may now be talking about a different scenario. But the defeat comes, nobody can say that it was a disappointing year for Limerick football. In my view, they have stepped on a bit. They've consolidated in Division 3. Came within a few kicks of a ball of being in Division 2. And we saw how close and how unlucky Derry were last week in that fantastic game with Donegal. That we're there and we can rub shoulders with the like of these. But getting back to Billy Lee's summation of it again, Jack, I think he is spot on. Cork are playing at a different level on a day-to-day basis if you talk about the league, and we are playing at that level below, and the result reflected that. Maybe the margin didn't reflect it, but all it did, of course, was, I suppose, if you take it in its totality, a disappointing day for Limerick football, disappointing 48 hours for Limerick football, because, of course, as we know, on Thursday evening, the under-20 side went out of the Munster Championship to Tipperary. And again, the scoreline, if you take a superficial analysis of the scoreline, you would say that Limerick were probably unlucky, but I think the scoreline flatters Limerick a small bit in that Brian Ahern, who came into the game and started as a sub, Brian Ahern from Bradford, and I thought made a huge impact and got a cracking goal with literally the last kick of the game. And but the damage was well done at that stage, and Limerick enjoyed a period of dominance, which Jerry O'Sullivan conceded after the game. They did a period of dominance in the first half, Jack, but did not reflect it on the scoreboard. And it came back to haunt. Yeah. And they went a period, a considerable period, without getting a score, and you just can't do that.
Yeah, I think inaccuracy probably was the major costing factor for the under-20s. But there's a lot of players that we saw that night that we'll see in the senior squad in the coming years. But I don't want to come away from the senior game yet, Matt. I suppose you mentioned that goal that Cork got, but it was a double whammy that Limerick lost Donal O'Sullivan in the collision. And again, best wishes to Donal. I presume it was a concussion, if anything, or a head injury. He got a nasty blow. But Aaron O'Sullivan in his debut did excellently well. Didn't concede a goal, kicked his 45. But how big of a loss is it to concede a goal and your captain in the second minute of a game? Could that be the reason for the loss?
It's a huge loss. It's a huge loss, Jack. That's it. And your kick-out strategy and everything. Donal O'Sullivan has been such an integral part of the Limerick football setup for nearly a decade now, Jack. And in Donal O'Sullivan, you get a goalkeeper, you get a footballer, but you also get that very, very important ingredient. You get a leader. He's been a leader. He's been somebody that those on the panel and those coming into the panel look up to, and there is no way that we can quantify the loss of Donal O'Sullivan in so early in the game. It was obviously a concussion, and we wish Donald the very best to get back to his, let's hope he's feeling better at this stage. But the answer to your question is simply, Jack, it was a huge loss. Now, I'd like to concur with what you have said there about Aaron O'Sullivan. I thought for a man that has come in that, according to Billy Lee, and I wouldn't for 1 minute doubt him, was wearing a Limerick jersey for the very first time. And he kept a clean sheet after that, and he went up and he kicked the 45. So he brought a lot of the, he just didn't bring the name to the goalkeeping job. He brought a lot of Donald O'Sullivan's attributes as well, it was a smashing debut for Aaron O'Sullivan, and it confirms to Billy Lee that in that number one position, which is becoming more and more important by the day, because we see the importance of the Nicky Quaids of this world, the Stephen Cluxtons of this world, and the impact and the influence of goalkeepers in the modern game. So Billy now knows that he rather than having a non-tested standby for the goalkeeping slot, he is a young man that can step up to the occasion.
Yeah, and certainly Aaron did step up. But as you mentioned, that kick-out strategy, I think it didn't, and not through any fault of anyone delivering to you. I think just Cork got the ball out from their kick-outs just that bit easier, and were able to build, whereas Limerick found it that bit more tough, and it's reflected on the scoreboard in the end. But a huge learning year for Limerick, and I know myself that every week that Limerick play hurling, that I probably single out Sean Finn, and it's probably right to do so. But for Limerick the last day in the full back line, like Brian Fanning, Sean O'Dea and Michael Donovan were outstanding with the threat the Cork posed with Brian Hurley and Luke Connolly and these lads. And I just think them three deserve a mention as well.
Oh, they absolutely do. And then in the course of the game, Ronan McCarthy had the luxury of throwing in the experienced Mark Collins. Who knows a thing or two about scoring goals. They did very, very well, I thought. Now, we all knew coming into this year, and he has confirmed it year in, year out, about the ability of Sean O'Dea, excellent footballer, a Sigerson Cup medal winner with UCD. But certainly it has been an absolutely fantastic year for Brian Fanning and Mike Donovan. They have nailed down those positions. Brian Fanning again was outstanding last Saturday. Absolutely outstanding. A fantastic year for him. And I suppose in a way it was a small help to Aaron O'Sullivan when he came in, that the man immediately in front of him was one of his club mates. It may have helped him to settle, and a club mate who was on the top of his form, and was in the top of his form from the start of the game last Saturday. Yeah,
just a great performance throughout the year from all them lads. And I suppose just kind of to close the year for Limerick, Matt, another positive year, solidified the place in Division 3, third Munster semi-final on the bounce. Limerick have probably moved up a level, and it'll be an onus on the players to just move that further next year. But Billy Lee's tenure not officially came to an end on Saturday, but he's 2 years added to his 3-year term have come to an end. How important is it that Limerick football get Billy Lee on board again with the progress he's made in his 5 years?
Crucial. In a word, Jack, crucial. Crucial.
It's a huge contrast from 2017 to his first year to now, and it's great to see. And if Limerick had to make that next step, they need Billy at the helm.
What he has done has been phenomenal, and I've said this, and at the risk of boring the people that are looking and listening to us, what Billy Lee went through at one stage one year when over 50 players refused to come into the county panel. There's another person in this country or another person involved in management that wouldn't have walked away. he stuck with it, and full credit. And any success that they get has to reflect on his good management and his management skills and that of his backroom team.
I just think it reflects.
Yeah, but he talks about teamwork on the field. He also talks about it off the field, and when it comes to doling out kudos, he's very liberal at doling them out at his backroom colleagues. In that short interview, he doled out kudos to Adrian O'Brien, and rightly so, and to Brian Begley, and like. Billy Lee his philosophy is teamwork on and off the field, but what he has done, and he hasn't changed Limerick football. He's transformed it.
Yeah, and I just leave it with this in relation to Billy Lee. I remember, as you said, rightly said, there was a couple of years back, there was 50 players that didn't refused or weren't able to make it onto the panel for one reason or another. And then this year, you obviously have the bones of 40 players in Billy Lee's squad. You have 20 squad. And then you have a third squad then for players that missed out in 20s and didn't quite make the cut for the senior squad. So to go from not having 50 players to probably having 70 or 80 players involved now is just a true testament to Billy. And please God, we'll see him at the helm in 2022, and we'll have 8 games in Division 3 to look forward, or 7 games in Division 3 to look forward to. But another positive year for Limerick football, and that's all that needs to be said for us.
Don't qualify 8 games, Jack. Let's be optimistic. We will have 8 games. We'll have a Division 3 final.
Yes, and we'll have fans at all those games. But another positive year. Look, obviously, straight after defeat, it's going to be disappointing. But when Billy Lee and Shamey and Brian Begley and all the lads look back, and all the players involved, another positive year, another year of growth. So onwards and upwards for 2022 for the Limerick footballers. And look, we'll see them all in club championship, and that's where it turns to now. But moving on to ladies football, again, another disappointing weekend for football, and this time for the ladies. Last weekend in Callan, 113 to 1-6 against Wicklow. I suppose 7 points against the heavy favourites for the championship in the first round is not the worst result when you can take in 2 sin bins as well. But there is that bit of a gap there to Wicklow at the moment.
There is, yeah. They played in Division 3, of course, of the league. They're the only one of the 5 teams in the junior championship that played in Division 3. Probably had a head start and are favourites from the start to win the championship. And I have to say, overall, I was a bit disappointed with the Limerick performance. 25 minutes gone, it's Limerick 1-4. Wicklow 4 points. And the whole 35 minutes after that, Limerick could only muster 2 points, which is a small bit alarming. It was definitely a disappointing result. Now, you can sugarcoat it by saying that it was against the strongest team, and that is an undeniable fact. But like it gives you very little elbow room now. All right, 4 out of 5 are qualifying, but like it moves the game against Derry, which is on in Kinnegad at 2:00 on Sunday. It moves it almost into the category of a must-win game. If you are to make the semi-finals, now they'll say I'm talking rubbish when you have 4 games and 4 to qualify out of 5. But like if you're to lose the second game, if you lose your first 2 games, there is very, very little elbow room left. Now they're facing a Derry team who Limerick have a fantastic record against. As late as last year's championship and league, Limerick had a huge win over them in the league last year and had very, very comprehensive win over them in the championship. But we have a Derry team that had a poor league and got hockeyed in the Ulster final by Antrim. And lo and behold, last Saturday they came back and beat Antrim in the All-Ireland Championship. So, like, what has gone before and our record against Derry, whilst it is impressive, it doesn't give us the right to think that we're going to go up to Kinnegad and just turn them over. I think Limerick have a battle in their hands here. Now, Donald Ryan did say in his interview afterwards, we just have got to drive on, park the Wicklow result and focus on Derry. And that's exactly what they've got to do. Limerick's focus now must be is to get that vital first win. It is absolutely crucial that they get that first win because, right, they're playing Derry next week. The following Saturday, I presume it will probably be Kinnegad or Kinna somewhere up around the Midlands anyway. They're playing Antrim. And then they finish with a game with Carlow. So, like, this is the cut and thrust of the Premier competition that the girls are competing in. And, like, certainly they've just got to pick it up. Like, no doubt whatsoever about it. Caroline Hickey was a huge loss. We flagged it last week that Caroline would not be playing in that she plans on going abroad in mid-August sometime. I just wonder, should we have used Caroline during the league up to the time she was about to depart and help us get over the hump of qualifying? But it is what it is now. Definitely, there isn't a doubt about it. Wicklow they're a sharp team. They're an accomplished team. Now, look at Limerick's record this year in defence of Limerick's record. They've played 4 games, and this is a slightly anomalous situation in the ladies' football structures. Jack, they've played 4 games, and 3 of them are against division, against intermediate sides or Division 3 sides. So the only game that they played and they won was a game against the only team that they played that was at their own level, full stop, Carlow. Like, Offaly are playing intermediate, Leitrim are playing intermediate, Wicklow were playing in Division 3. Like, the 3 of the 4 opponents that they have met so far in 2021 are exposed to football at a higher level.
Yeah, I suppose when you're saying that, we'll probably get a better gauge of where this Limerick team are when they play Derry, who, as you said, were in the same league as them. But looking at Derry, then they've, as you said, they've lost both their league games, and then they go on and win the first round of the championship. So it'll definitely be backs to the wall for Donald's side, because if you go into a third week on the bounce with 2 losses, that pressure in the third game against Antrim will be huge. So crucially vital that they get the win this weekend, as you said, in Kinnegad.
It's crucial, Jack. Absolutely crucial. But I have faith that, when they will come up against their own level, that they won't be found wanting. Like, they had a decent performance, I thought, against Offaly in the first round. Now, the performance against Leitrim was patchy enough, fell behind and that sort of thing. But, I thought for a while in the first half last Sunday, whilst Wicklow may have been slightly on top, but the scoreboard after 25 minutes did not reflect that. So, I genuinely thought that they were in with a decent shout of making Wicklow fight all the way. But it didn't happen. But I still have confidence, as you rightly said, that they're now facing 3 teams that are at their own level. So let's hope it's onwards and upwards here. I think that they can get over Derry. I honestly believe that they can, because you don't know what dynamic is between counties, neighbouring counties. Like we spoke about the dynamic of Limerick and Tipperary in the hurling, Derry and Antrim up there in the far north. You just don't know what's between counties like that threw up that result. But it was an important result, because in the last game of the group stages in Antrim, pushed Leitrim very, very, very close, led them most of the way, as Leitrim only won it in the last couple of minutes. So Antrim can be that bad. and Derry certainly can be that bad if they beat Antrim. So it's going to be, let's say, a tricky test, but I think Limerick will probably have the trumps.
Yeah, and I'd err on that side as well. And look, a win over a team that gives you a bit of that confidence. You can kickstart the season. You go on to Antrim then with that pep in your step. But like, that's all ahead of us. That's this Sunday, as you said, at 2:00, available on the LGFA portal. I suppose bridging then into Camogie, and I don't know, should we say it now, but the issue with the dual players is going to arise now, starting from this weekend. Obviously, the footballers were on their own last weekend. Before we get into the Camogie game against Wexford, can you see any way to rectify that scenario where you could have girls playing 2 games in 24 hours, or even, unfortunately, in the same day?
Not in the present condensed structure of the fixtures. I can't, I'm afraid. Something has got to be done about it. Limerick have the problem. Cork have the problem. Cork have Libby Coppinger, Hannah Looney. You know, they're in Maeve Cahalan. They're involved with the footballers at 2:00 on Saturday in Tipperary Town, and are involved with the Camogie in Parky Rin at 2:00 on Sunday. We have a similar situation whereby we have Anya Cunningham and Roisin Ambrose, who will be involved with the Camogie at 2:00 on Sunday. Oh, sorry, 5:00 on Saturday.
5 on Saturday.
5 on Saturday, and then those girls will have to hightail it and to Kinnegad. You know, it predicts, it presents a bigger dilemma now for Donald Ryan than it does for Pat Ryan. Because Pat Ryan can go in with a clean sheet. His game is first, play his girls, first round of the championship, and that's it. But Donald Ryan is faced with the decision: do I play the girls who less than 24 hours ago had a hard Camogie game? It's a big call, and if you know, answer to you, I don't know what the answer to this conundrum is, and it's boring talking about it now because it's going on for so long, and like, whilst superficially at least, there looks to be a solution to it if you play one day and the other the day after, 24 hours later, rather than playing the two of them on the same day and forcing players to hop from one venue to another, or worse still, that the two games are on at the same time. Look, it's not a solution. It's only camouflaging over the problem. Yeah. That's all. It's only, and it's interesting that and Gary had a program on RT about women staying in sport and keeping in sport. Like, but if we're going to be burning out players with this dual thing, you know, we're going to lose players, Jack. And God knows every player is wanted in all codes. So, unfortunately, Jack, I cannot enlighten you as to what the solution is.
Yeah.
But what I can enlighten you is that it has to be found.
Yeah, there's definitely a problem there. And look, it just comes down to player welfare, because you know from these players that they'll play 7 days a week in the green jersey, but it's just not sustainable. And it's a credit to players that are giving both codes a go, because it's brilliant to see them playing. But look, as we said, it's not sustainable.
Because they're of that mindset. You know, they just want to get out and playing now. And I've spoken to a couple of our girls that have been involved in that.
I'd imagine Matt Lee back there a second, because his thing is still going. But yeah, it just comes down to the issue of player welfare for these girls that we know from Limerick that just want to represent their county. They want to wear that green jersey, and look, I guess I said it's a credit to them that they're putting themselves on the line like that. But they shouldn't be forced to do it, and whether it's play games midweek and weekends, I don't know what the solution is. I suppose a lot of counties are in a difficult situation at the moment that they have to contend with playing games over a short period of time. But anyways, Limerick play Wexford this Saturday at 5 o'clock in Newcastle West in the first round of the All-Ireland Senior Camogie Championship. I suppose Limerick will come into the game as favourites, having operated in Division 1, ran Kilkenny and Galway very close. Kilkenny and Galway obviously in last year's All-Ireland final. I just have Matt back now. I just moved on there, Matt, onto a preview of the game. I'm just saying, look, it's a situation that needs to be resolved, but we're not going to resolve it here. We have a game to look forward to 5 o'clock on Saturday. Limerick will probably be favoured, just considering they played in Division 1. Wexford were in Division 2, but Wexford are somewhat of a sleeping giant. They've had a few tumultuous years, to say the least, but you can't underestimate the Wexford coming into a Camogie Championship.
No, and you know, it has been a turbulent period for Wexford Camogie. Like if we were having this discussion 10 years ago, we would be the narrative would be surrounding Wexford winning the All-Ireland Senior and Intermediate Championships on the one day, which they did, completed a spectacular double, and it'll give you a sense of how far from grace they have fallen. Now, obviously there has been a transition from a golden age of players who have now moved on to retirement, and replacing them isn't always very easy. And but the transition to the new group has been dogged by behind the scenes discord and all that sort of stuff. But they seem to be back on track now. They've brought in a manager. He's a Corkman from Ballycotton.
We've lost Matt again. Yeah, it has been a fall for grace for Wexford Camogie over the years. One of the superpowers, if not the superpower in Camogie for so many years. As Matt rightly points out there, a senior and intermediate All-Ireland final win on one day doesn't come around very often, but for whatever reason, it's been very turbulent up there in recent years. They got the league semi-final. They were beaten by Down in Division 2. Wexford will feel themselves they should be operating in the top tier, whether that'll come to fruition. But it's a difficult game for Pat Ryan and his team to face into. Obviously, the last time we saw them was that Munster final against Cork, 4-20 to 2-9. And I suppose Cork, Kilkenny and Galway are the three teams you look up to and the teams you want to be going against. And for Limerick to lose by 17 points on the day was very disappointing. I suppose they would have travelled with great expectation and hope after such positive performances against Galway and Kilkenny, and to fall in that manner will do little good, I suppose, for Pat Ryan and his side. And it's how you regroup from a game like that is the real question. And I'm going to let Matt in here again now. And sorry there, Matt, you were talking about the manager. I was just saying there about the impact of the loss to Cork. But you continue there with Wexford management, and you can go on then into just that Cork game that I suppose will probably set back Limerick a small bit.
Yeah, it will, and apologies there for the breakdown. Unfortunately, it's here at my end, the gremlins of this week, Jack. Anyway, I put my hands up and condemn the service providers
modern technology
for shoddy service, and we still don't acknowledge it. Yeah, you could say it was a chastening lesson, but the overriding lesson that you get from the Cork game is the level that you have to reach to be able to compete for trophies. I think that's the one thing that has been brought home. But Limerick have played 6 games in so far this year. They've won 3 of them. Now, they have lost the 3 games to what we would regard as the big 3, Galway, Kilkenny and Cork. Now, different levels of performances in all 3. Spectacular performance that nearly overturned Kilkenny, who subsequently went on to win the league. And I thought a very decent performance against Galway, were it not for the ability of Galway to create those 3 excellent goals, which were the difference in the finish. But a disappointing performance against Cork. And Pat Ryan came out immediately afterwards and he said that Limerick froze on the day, and that to me summed it up. because it was one of those days that if you were to win that Munster Championship, everything had to go right for Limerick, and things had to go less than right for Cork. Now, it happened the other way around. Everything that Cork were like a series of King Midases out there on the pitch. Everything they turned to gold. And whilst Limerick, nothing really went right for them. Now they did have kind of a bit of a barnstorming finish. Got a couple of scores and put a more respectable look on the scoreboard. But the overall consideration has to be that this is the level that Limerick have to get to if they're to be serious contenders for provincial, league, or All-Ireland honours. Now, the game against Wexford competed in Division 2, got to the semi-final, were beaten by Down in the semi-final, who were last year's All-Ireland Intermediate Championship. But you're right, there's a great tradition of Camogie and Wexford, but they are coming out of a golden era now at the moment and are trying to reap. We met them in Croke 2 years ago in the championship. It was probably, Jack, at a time when Wexford were at their lowest ebb in terms of the shenanigans that were going on behind the scenes. And they really put it up to Limerick. Despite all that, they seemed, the players on the field that went out that day seemed to divorce themselves from all that was going on. And were it not for a fine goal, an excellent goal, actually, that's the same day by Cueva Costello, what's new, Limerick could have been in trouble, but it was a result, coupled with the win over Offaly that particular year, that put Limerick into the knockout stages. And in that sense, it was a groundbreaking result. Now, I would see the composition of the group that Limerick are competing in the Camogie Championship. I think you've Tipperary at a higher level than the other three. And it's going to be dog eat dog. A dogfight of huge proportions between Limerick, Wexford and Offaly for that other quarter-final place. So it is absolutely crucial that for that reason that they get off to a winning start. And for another reason that it's crucial that they get off to a winning start, Jack, is because Limerick's remaining 2 games are away from home. We travel to Tipperary the following week, and then we finish the campaign with a trip to Offaly. So it's huge. I think Limerick can get the win. They certainly will have to benefit from their run in Division 1 of the Camogie League. They will have to benefit for notwithstanding the final result. They will have to benefit from their result, from their run in the Munster Championship. I think it's teed up for a Limerick win, but it's not going to be easy. But I think they may just get over the line.
Yeah, it certainly won't be easy. But the best luck to Pat Ryan and his squad, 5 o'clock this Saturday in Newcastle. Anyone to watch that game, you have to hear from Matt, who will be on Coke Comms for the stream. I suppose just not before we move on from Camogie, Matt, it was a disappointing night. I suppose disappointing has been the key word today for some reason. But the minors in the Munster Minor A Camogie final lost out 2-19 to 7 points against Cork. I suppose there's a bit of a gap in the scoreline, but it probably reflects more on Cork's dominance than a bad loss for Limerick, who in the minor A did themselves a huge credit.
They did, and it's alarming that one county has gone so far ahead of the rest, and that's not a criticism of Cork. It's actually a compliment to them for the way they do things right. But I just wonder at the end of the day, taking a more global look at it, is it any good for Camogie? Because like Limerick went into that Munster final last night. Now, believe it or not, a neutral venue could not be found to stage the game. Went to the toss of a coin, and Cork won the toss. But The result would worry me, Jack. The lopsided result of the result would worry me. But equally worrying is the fact that this was a Limerick team that had beaten Tip and had beaten Clare. So where for Clare and where for Tip and where for Limerick? Are Cork gone that far ahead of the entire rest of the province? Unfortunately, from a competitive point of view, I think it is the case. And unfortunately, I think that it's not serving the game. It's not serving the game well. Basically, is the Munster underage competitions, are they evolving and developing into a Leinster Senior Football Championship scenario where it's regarded as success if you get to the Leinster final to be beaten by Dublin? You know, everybody is crying wolf about that, but you know, I think it's a serious from a Camogie point of view. It's a serious situation, I think, and it needs to be addressed now. I don't have the answers as to how it might be addressed, but Limerick play Cork again in the All-Ireland series in August. You know, so can they turn it around?
Yeah, it'll be a tough ass turn it around, but look, the best look to Chris Martell on his side, and look, it's good to see Limerick getting to these finals. It can only do good for them to just experience playing in finals. I know minor might have been first time for all the Cork players as well, but the more finals you play and the more used to them you get, the less nerves will play a part. But anyways, onwards and upwards for them, even in defeat, like the footballers.
I suppose the more you get there, the more you want to win them, you know. Let's hope that would be the situation, you know.
Yeah, and obviously this weekend it's going to be about the senior Camogie side, but we'll have the minors back in All-Ireland action very soon. I suppose that's it for the games, Matt. As soon as we have that bit of time not having previewed the hurling, just it was announced today that the Connacht final is being moved to Croke Park to facilitate 18,000. Now, that's next weekend, but this weekend Limerick versus Cork will have 7,000. The Leinster final will have 18,000. Was there scope for Munster J to move the Munster final out of Croke Park, and get more fans there, or would that have taken away from it? What's your stance on that?
Well, my opinion is divided on it. Pragmatically, I suppose in circumstances it would probably be a runner in that, you know, you get 18,000 into the Munster final. But we discussed it in the podcast now, and I'm not wanting to repeat anything that will appear in the Munster final podcast, but the Munster final is a very, very special occasion, a very, very, very unique occasion. Very unique, and the thing about it is it's unique to the province of Munster. And whether it's in Thurles, whether it's in Limerick, whether it's in Cork, or the odd trip down to Killarney, that is a special atmosphere about the Munster final. Whether you would lose that atmosphere by taking it to Croke Park, I'm pretty sure you'd lose a certain amount of it, especially with 18,000 in Croke Park. But a lot of the Munster final, of course, and a lot of the special occasion is, of course, the colour, the going and the going and the coming from the final and the way to the final, and in the hostelries on the way to the final, and the build-up and the mingling of the fans, and that would all be diluted in Croke Park, I would imagine. Look, I have mixed feelings about it. You know, for 1 year as a solution, I would be happy to go along with it. But no. The Munster final should be played in Munster where at all possible, in my view, Jack.
Yeah, I'd go along with that way. And I know the Leinster final was brought to Thurles a few years back. That's because of a Michael Bublé concert. I suppose we're in a different time now where it's not been moved. But I just think 7,000 in Thurles.
These are that is like chalk and cheese. No, actually.
Oh, I know, I know.
The Leinster final, and this is not degrading the Leinster final for 1 minute, it doesn't have the same level of attraction or generate the same level of atmosphere. And anyway, Kilkenny and Galway.
He's just about to rant into about Kilkenny and Galway. I suppose it is a tricky one for everyone involved. Do you want more fans at these games, or do you want to have it at its home venue? I was in the Gaelic grounds last Saturday. It was 3,500 of us. Felt like a real Munster Championship day. Now I know attendances for the football championship of Limerick are going to be lower. That's just the way it is around here. But there was great noise. If you double that in Thurles, a Munster final day, I think you will get a good atmosphere. I think for the players themselves, going from 0 to 7,000 will make a huge difference. Because they went from 50,000 to 80,000 down to 0. So I think getting it back up slowly will be good for players. It's a tricky one. I think I'd rather go to Thurles than go to Croke Park. I think in Croke Park, 18,000 in an 80,000 seater stadium is very noticeable. Considering only one terrace, I think the terraces last weekend, the Gaelic grounds might only had 200-300, and they looked fairly packed. It was spread out. So it is an interesting one. There'll be 7,000. Hopefully Limerick can get through to that, get into a semi-final. That will be played in Croke Park. You'd imagine that will be 2 or 3 weeks away at least. You'll be hoping if you could get 30 to 40,000 there. Things are going well. There's people getting vaccinated. They have the one jab vaccine now for 18, 34-year-olds. So we're trending in the right direction. It's hard to know how it'll go, what the story will be in the summer with this new variant and things, but I take 7,000 in Croke Park or in Thurles over 18 in Croke Park. That's just me. Matt was giving his opinion. I think he was edging that way. I'm hopeful he's coming back on, because we want to talk about Ballylanders, who won the South Senior League last night. They beat Ula 12 points to 7. I know Matt will be keen to discuss Ballylanders, but I don't know if he's coming back. It might be a nice way to end it. Just to go through the games at the weekend, we have the Munster final, 4:15, Páirc Uí Chaoimh this Sunday for the 7,000 lucky enough to attend, and wish you a great day. And Munster finals are a very, very special day, one a year. To hear more about the Munster final, tune in tomorrow. We'll be on, myself, Matt, and Kieran. We recorded this morning. Kieran, as usual, gives in his brilliant tidbits and things like that, and has obviously experienced playing a Munster final. Ladies football versus Derry, 2 o'clock Sunday, Kinnegad. They'll be live on the LJFA portal. And then on Saturday, to start off the weekend, I suppose, the senior Camogie side in action against Wexford in Newcastle from 5. That'll be streamed live as well. I don't think we're going to have Matt back. So a huge thanks to Matt, as always. A huge thanks to all of you for tuning in. Feel free to comment afterwards and we'll get back to you. But everyone, enjoy a brilliant weekend of Limerick GA action, and thank you for tuning in.
The impression again we get out with what you put into it. It's like a walk of life. If you're good enough, go out and get it, no more about it.
But not so much control in the centre of the field from Kilkenny as Richie Bennett sends it high and over the bar.
Your mother sends you down to the shop for a pound's worth of goods, and she gives you 50 pence. You can't get the pound's worth of goods, can you?
Just about kept in. Oh, well done, Johnny Buckley. To do that to Tomas O'Shea, he deserves to score from here. One of the highlights of the Sunday game.
Limerick went out there from the word court today. No more about it. They made all the running, that was it. Put the ball over the bar and the back of it, and that's it. No ifs, no buts.
Is there much time left? We have a couple of injuries. Here comes Kieran Carey. Carey leading the charge of the right brigade. 45 metres out. He's a chance to score. He's put it high. He's put it over.
There's no sympathy.